Today I'm going to do a little bit of work on a ETA 2783. And before I get into that, I just want to talk a little bit about, this movement in particular, but also kind of ETA vintage movements in general. I had a lot of experience with the ETA 2472 just by coincidence, because I bought a couple of watches that had that movement, and then I really focused on those for a while, kind of switching parts around and trying to get something to run. So that was, this watch is the 2472. And then I bought this lot of used parts on Ricardo, the Swiss auction website, and it came with this watch, which was an incomplete watch, but it had a 2783 movement in it, which is what I have here. And actually, this was also in a different one. This was just a base plate for 2783, but this was the one that was actually in a watch, in that watch. So yesterday I turned on my camera system. I didn't turn on my camera system. I was working with, I have yet another 2783, which is from another watch I purchased, and the other one had been disassembled, and I was reassembling it, and I got it working. And that's this one. Yeah, so this one's working now, and then the non-working one is over here right now. But basically, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the non-working one out. I'm going to show you what's wrong with it, and then I'm going to try to fix it. But the thing about, like, if you're learning watchmaking, the reason that part of what's interesting is actually like going in there and figuring out what's wrong. I think it's really interesting, and I want to show you that. But the other thing is the history of these movements, and what the usefulness of them, and the value or the cost, and whether or not a given movement makes a good movement as a learning tool or not. So regarding the 2783, so I ended up with this one because I bought $57 worth of parts in this lot of vintage watches, and it included this really cool Pierpont watch that was working perfectly, all these other cases and straps and dials. So it was a good buy, and great for me for having some things to mess around with and learn from. And this was on the Swiss auction website, Ricardo, which is where I buy a lot of vintage watches and parts here in Switzerland. So the thing is, once you identify a movement by the number on it, like this one, you can see it says 2783, ETA 2783 right there. This one says the same on the bottom. You can go to the Ranfft website, or you could just Google ETA 2783. But Ranfft is interesting because he's a fellow in Germany that's created this huge database of movements. So if you look at the ETA 2783, it has some interesting information about it. One is the diameter of the pins that hold the hands. So if you want to, if you're looking for compatible hands, these numbers are very common in the vintage ETA: 1.5 millimeter for the hour hand, 0.9 millimeter for the minute hand, and 0.25 millimeter for the second hand. The 2472 is 0.21 millimeter for the second hand. And I just know that because, like I said, I worked with that a lot. But the other numbers that are interesting on here are if you're going to, part of the issue with a movement is if you end up just buying a movement without a case, it can be really difficult to find a case for it to fit in, because of the issues of the height of the movement and the place, the height of the stem in the movement relative to the stack of dial and everything else. So the best thing to do if you're going to try to replace a movement in a vintage watch is know what the original case was designed for, and then find the same movement for that case. in this case, this is a case for a 2472, and this is a 2472. So eventually I'm going to put these two together. I think the reason I brought this out is because this dial I purchased in that lot of vintage parts for $57. And that's the real reason that I bought that, because I knew that dial would work with the 2742 because it looked familiar to me. And after I got it, I tested it. So I wanted to put it on this movement and back in this case as a working thing eventually. I'm not going to do that today, but just to explain that. So back to Ranfft, the height of the movement is important, but this F and T measurement has to do with well, let's actually look. There's a thing here, comments about the data. F is the mounting height, distance between the dial plane and the mounting flange, and T is the stem height, distance between the dial plane and the stem center. So those numbers are important if you're trying to swap out movements, which I'm not trying to do. I'm just trying to say there are these resources for finding these numbers and things. So if you are trying to make a compatible watch, like put one vintage movement in a different vintage case or whatever, you can look at those numbers and you can figure out, okay, these movements are identical because they have the same height, diameter, F and T values. And then same thing with hands, like if you want to move the hands from one to another, or if you want to buy hands on eBay and the seller has told you what the diameters are, that can help you figure out compatibility as well. And I think all that stuff is fun, even though, again, the other thing about this movement is this is kind of like a $50 movement on eBay, or if you pick up one used, non-working or working, it could be $50 to maybe $100 if it's working, and maybe $150 if it's like in new old stock or something. It's not a super valuable movement. And often, like I pick up these movements in watches that cost like $25 or $30. And then you have a complete watch, often working with a movement like this. So it's a good movement. Also, these vintage ETAs are also good movements for just kind of practicing watchmaking and watch repair, which is what I'm going to do right now. So then there's a website called Watch Repair Talk, and I just doing a quick Google search of ETA 2783. I also found somebody, they do these kind of long posts where they just include pictures and their own disassembly and notes about problems that they ran into or whatever. So we're not really going to reference that. It's just some information about how useful these web resources are for this kind of thing. Oh, there's one other thing I want to talk about. I don't know exactly what this is, but I ran into this PDF, and well, I'll tell you what it says it is. It's the Indicator General of Watches and Jewelry, Electronic and Machines, from the Chamber of Swiss Horology or whatever, watchmaking. But what's interesting about this PDF, and I'll put a link to it in the description, is it has it's kind of a document, like a kind of a magazine that's about advertising of this period of watches, and then contact information for the various companies, and it's just got tons of super interesting information in it. But the one thing that I found that I thought was cool was that when I bought that lot of watches that I showed you before, I think it's on page 36. Yeah. That was from an old watchmaker from Le Barlow, a town in Switzerland, and his name was Bernard Dons. And the reason I know that is because some of the dials were badged Bernard Dons, and then this one is BD, which is also Bernard Dons. And it stands for Bernard Dons. And so in this document, this is from whatever, 1970, I think. You can see BDSA, Bernard Dons in Le Breloux, and then you can see that there was also a Dons Brothers, and there's a Dons Jean-Marie. So there's a Dons family in Le Breloux that were watchmakers probably for generations. And so when I picked up this lot of watches that had a lot of BD and Bernard Dons things in it, the company that sold me that is here in Geneva, in Marin. They're called Watchies. And they also have a parts website I'll put a link to in the description. But the guys from Watchies told me that the lot of stuff that I bought was from this old watchmaker, Bernard Dons. I don't know if he passed away or if he retired or if he was just getting rid of stuff or if his family was getting rid of stuff. But what's interesting to me about it is that there's this movement, back to this PDF, there were thousands of small watchmakers like this around Switzerland in the mid-19th century, and or is it the 20th century? Anyway, like the 1950s and 60s, and they and this PDF has lists and lists of them and where they were from, and I also look at that Ricardo website a lot. Like I've spent many hundreds of hours looking at vintage watches on there. And so a lot of these names will come up over and over again, and you don't know what they are because they're not famous names. You know, there's probably 10 or 20 famous names of watchmakers today. But at this time there were all these different family-owned businesses that were in the watchmaking business in one way or another, and many of them had their own watches, which were these kind of ETA movements, badged with a dial, marketed to a certain. You know, they had their own marketing networks. In Switzerland or worldwide, the ways that they distributed it, and that's a big, rich part of the history of Switzerland for me. So I'd like to look at those things and have a little bit of sense of where these things are coming from, but I also have this feeling that in the future, this is kind of a special period, the 1950s and 60s before the quartz crisis. And a lot of these watches and brands, to me, have this value that's going to be lost forever because the watch industry is not organized that way anymore. The smaller watch companies today are extremely, they're building these extremely expensive, exclusive watches. And it's cool that those companies exist. And in some ways, it's those companies are more creative than these companies in the 50s and 60s. But I like the 50s and 60s because it was kind of like a family-owned business, working class, inexpensive watches, and yet they were these mechanical watches that I love because they're purely mechanical, and they were at the height of that evolution of the mechanical wristwatch as a something that everybody had, so they were mass-produced. The small watch companies today in Switzerland, many of them are doing extraordinary things, but the prices, because of the extraordinary aspects of what they're doing, the prices are very high they're just out of the spectrum they're not doing this family business thing anymore. In some ways they are, but they're going for the rich clientele, not working class or everybody, watches for everybody. So I like this period. I like this PDF because it has all these cool old advertisements, and it lists those companies. And if you're somebody who looks at eBay a lot, and you look at some brand and you don't know what it is, you could look it up in this document and just see that, okay, this was a legit watchmaker in the 50s or 60s in Switzerland. And again, the amazing thing is that a lot of those families still exist, and those in the used market, those watches are still floating around. And yeah, I'll shut up. Okay, so that's like the longest introduction to a video ever. Let's see how long I can make the video. So yesterday, I think I was saying I started working on this movement without turning on my camera system. And I regretted it afterwards. I was like, I'll just tinker with this for a minute. And then I completely fixed it. And I was like, well, I should have turned on the camera. But because I have a second one, we'll just look at that instead. And this has, and maybe I learned enough yesterday that I can do this kind of quickly. We'll see. Okay, so this was just a demo of the base plate for that 2783. I don't think I'll need that. I might reference the one I fixed yesterday if I get confused about placement of parts or anything. The other thing I need are some screwdrivers. And I want to use, I want to show this microscope for a second because I've set this up to, I showed this in the previous video, but I gotta hit record. I put this, it's called a Barlow lens on this microscope, and I think it's kind of interesting for anybody who's interested in getting one of these microscopes, which I think is great for watchmaking. This is called a Barlow lens, and this is a 0.5 magnification, which 0.5, which means it's unmagnifier. And what it does is, you know, whereas the focus on this right now is somewhere around where my hand is, without the Barlow lens. Let's do it like this. Focus is there, and it's quite tight, the field of view. If we put this 0.5, we double our field of view. And that's kind of nice, because it gives you a shot that's a little bit more manageable in terms of, it's not so tight that you can't, that you're always on a close-up. With my camera system, it's cool because I can just switch from, I have an overhead camera here. I can switch from that to the microscope. But with the microscope, with the Barlow lens on the microscope, you have more working space than you need, for me, and you still have a ton of magnification, which is good for, let's see, go all the way with that. You know, you can really get into the details with that, but it's not that practical for actually looking through the microscope. So I'm not sure what my favorite mode of operation will be yet. I also have this light that helps see things, and that also works with that Barlow lens. So for now, I think I'll try working with it and just not using the microscope with my eyes. I'll just try to look here and look on the monitor if I need to see a close-up of something. I really enjoyed when I was working with the microscope without recording. I really enjoyed just looking through the eyepiece as well. It was fantastic experience for having spent I don't know, tens or hundreds of hours, not hundreds, but probably 50 hours working on watches without a microscope. I wish I had got a microscope sooner. Okay, so I'm not going to wear finger cots, or should I? Oh, the other thing that's cool about the microscope is, like, for cleaning and just seeing when there are contaminants in the movement, it's very helpful. But you see them everywhere, or I do, so it can create a whole issue with spending time doing that. Okay, so if I'm not using the microscope, I'm also going to need these. And then I need to make sure all my cameras are kind of working. So I'll need some tweezers. Oh, so what's wrong with this right now? What's wrong is that the date wheel, from the position of the stem, the quick date function is active, but I can't push the stem in or out to get it to wind or set the time. And yesterday, what I was digging into in the other movement was the keyless works. So that's what we're going to look at it here because that's where the problem is. 0.6. The three screwdrivers I have here are 0.5, 0.6, and 0.8. And I want to try to use the screwdriver that's best matched to that screw. And I think the 0.8 would be that. And then we've got two screws here. Now to get to the keyless works, which is under here, I'm going to have to remove both of these plates and the date ring. Oops. Oops. Jeez. So I'm going to just kind of arbitrarily pick a place to keep these things. From yesterday, I'm pretty sure this is the same screw. I'm going to have to take that out too. I looked at those three screws and I think they were the same, but now I can go ahead and pull our hand gear, this gear, this. Oh, actually, I want to start looking at that. Oh, no, I don't want to start looking at it because I need to get the. Let me see if this can lift off and pull out. Oh, yeah, that's good. So I don't have to take this side off. That's a lot easier. Now, I can probably see what's wrong here right away. Oh, let me try just looking with the microscope so you can see it with me. What I found yesterday was that just it was pretty obvious, and I think it's obvious again here, somehow this lever has gotten in between. It should be on the other side of. See how this lever is on a lower plane? It should be on the other side of this gear. It should be in the slot under there. So that gear needs to be pushed up under that lever. And the way to do that is remove this plate and then fix it and then put this plate back. But there's a fidgety little spring, I think you can see the back of it here, underneath this plate. And it's hard to assemble all that. So nevertheless, we'll try. I should use a movement holder instead of this cushion. I just ordered some stuff from actually from Cousins and from Bergeon. Better, this is a Chinese-made movement holder. It's not great. I also want to make sure I don't put any pressure on the rotor and break it. But get this back into view. Make sure it's in focus. The light looks different. I think it's the angle. Okay, now I want to keep it at that flat angle. Okay, so now I'm going to remove this screw. And like I said, underneath is that spring. This movement holder is probably going to be worse than the cushion, to tell you the truth. Now, Okay, now I can use a piece of pegwood. It's actually a skewer from the grocery store to kind of hold that spring so it doesn't fly when I pull it out. There, it flew anyway, but it didn't fly too far. Okay, so now we can look at this keyless works. I forget if there's another spring under there. I think all the other springs are just the, it's actually built into that thing, the plate I just took off. But basically, this is what we need. We need to get that back in there. Now, I'm not sure if it's a good idea to try to move the stem. I'm trying to see if there's any other problem that I recognize. My instinct is that I should just reassemble this right now and see if that solved the problem. So I immediately have to deal with the spring again. So just to be clear, we just moved this tiny little arm from the wrong side of here where it was getting in the way of that. We moved it into the slot that it's supposed to be in, which is the groove in this gear. Now this is a problem because I really do have to stabilize this movement to press that gear, that spring in there. This is probably going to go badly. Oh, look at that. There's no way. That gear doesn't go under that, does it? The spring. See, that spring is has to be so... I don't know how you hold this down. This is the bottom of that setting screw too, I think. I'm not sure about that though. Good luck. Okay, actually, I think I got it. Yeah. Okay, so that arm is in the right place. That spring is back in there. And I just need to put that plate back on it. Now that plate has a spring action too, which is this little arm, which goes around this little knob right there. But in my experience, you can't set that until you've put that screw in and put some tension on the screw. Otherwise, you'll just get into a war with the spring knocking the whole plate loose. So right now I kind of wish I was looking through the microscope, but this also works. Okay, so now that we've got some pressure on this and our this plate, which also has the spring action on this arm, is not gonna go anywhere, we can cock this we need to push this back so it catches that, like that, and then tighten that some more. And that should do it. Now let's see if I have the full action on this. Oops. Okay, I know what that is. That gear needs a plate on top of it. It slides around. Sorry. Okay, so we're trying to put this gear back here. So it's held down by the this gear is held down by the plate that we removed, so I need to put that back. So now we'll put that plate back. So I think part of what happens as you learn watchmaking is things just start looking familiar, even if they're a little bit different between one movement and another. And then a lot of the tasks become tasks that you become more familiar with in terms of spring removal, insertion, screw, starting a screw. So then it kind of just becomes a challenge. I would say one challenge I need to meet is not slipping all the time. But this is the reality of this is also why I became interested in, like, I was watching a lot of videos of watchmakers, so-called watchmakers on YouTube, and I realized that they don't show you. It's really easy to just edit these videos and not show people that it's fidgety work and that you do slip. And if you're trying to come off as a professional and you're making videos, you're going to want to not show that you're scratching movements and you're slipping with the screwdriver, because people are going to be like, I'm not going to let you work on my watch. And I don't really care about that. I'm more interested in kind of capturing the real experience I'm having and talking about how it's kind of fun. And sometimes it's not fun. But sometimes not fun and challenging is also fun. So now it's the same problem. So let's look at this. Oh, no. I think I need to flip this over and see if the stem is incorrect. So I don't know how to do that exactly. It's possible also that this is the wrong stem, but I don't think so. Sorry. Okay, there. Okay, it seems to be functioning the way it's supposed to. Position 2, position 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. So that's winding. That should be, that might be quick set, and then this is time set, I think. So now we can put these other gears back on there. I'm gonna zoom out. Oh, that gear went underneath that plate. So I have to take that plate off again. How many people saw me making that mistake and were like, oh, that guy's going to have to take that plate off. Oh, he slipped with the screwdriver. Oh, he slipped again. So yesterday I spent $450 at Bergeon on the website, so I don't have the products yet. But most of the 200 of it or something was oils, because I've got to, and then fix a drop and all that. I got to be able to put back together. I want to be able to service a movement and put it back together correctly, oiled. So I think between the microscope and the oils, I should be able to do that. Ugh. Okay. So what's the connection between the history of watchmaking and the stuff I was talking about at the beginning of this video and what I'm doing now? Because they were two completely different things. One is history, business, and this is like a mechanical activity. But to me, they're related in this kind of holistic sense of what watchmaking and the history of Swiss watchmaking. They're not inseparable from each other. Back when the Swiss government was trying to help Switzerland establish its reputation as the best watchmakers in the world, the government was involved in helping the industry work with farmers, so that farmers had, so you can see the setting the hour hand right there, the hour hand gear, and then that's all the way out, right? So if we look at again the position of, sorry, I just interrupted myself. The Swiss government was involved in helping the farmers be able to do this work in the winters. So this pin is going to go from that position to the other position when I push the crown in, and then it's in the winding position, and I can feel the winding, the tension for the winding there. Oh, this is hilarious. So now whoever's been watching and paying attention, I also forgot to put the date wheel on, and I can't put it on now without removing that plate again. So it's perfect. The practice routine is built right into the I just slid the tweezers across that date wheel, which you don't want to do. I guess the thing to do is just do everything so slowly. Maybe there's a way to go into like half speed. Another thing about this watchmaking though is that as much as I enjoyed learning it, I think I would hate doing it. I think I would absolutely hate doing it as a profession. You'd have to pay me a lot of money to go through this pain as on a regular basis. A lot of these old mechanical things, it doesn't make sense anymore to do them. But I also think that's why the maintaining it as a kind of hobby pursuit is important in a way, because the art will be lost otherwise. I think it will be lost eventually anyway. And I'm not sure why that makes me emotional, but now I don't really know. Does this automatically align? I kind of remember on this side, it's hard to believe with these date wheels that the way that they're held on is like by a ring of teeth underneath a plate or two plates, and it just doesn't really feel right. First time I looked at one of these, I was like, what's holding that date wheel? And right now I'm looking at it, asking the same question. It kind of has, those teeth have to go under that side. It may be that you can rip it off, but you can't put it back on. I think I need to go onto the cushion for this. This is also the exact time when you're like, I don't want to be wearing these finger cots. See that I know one way to do this is take this plate off, get the thing in the right position, and then put that plate back on. But there should be a way to just kind of smooth it on. This is something that there's probably somebody who's going to watch this one day and be like, yeah, you need some lessons. You need somebody to tell you how to do that. Because there's a simple trick, but I don't seem to know it. That needs to go under there. And this needs to go under here. I think I got it. Yeah. Okay, so just to show you how fidgety that is, these teeth are actually under a groove in this plate. These teeth are actually under a groove in this plate. And these teeth are just up against this plate. Now, when I drop the plate that I just removed back here and screw it down, it will be on top of these teeth, and that thing will be secured. I love it. I become such an, I'm like, 1 minute I don't know what the hell I'm doing, and then the next minute I'm like, I know exactly what I'm doing. And perhaps that's the pleasure of it. In fact, that is the pleasure of this. So that's like the joy of watchmaking as an amateur is problem solving and figuring this stuff out. And certainly it'd be helpful to have, it is very helpful to have YouTube videos to refer to. I don't think I could do it without either professional training or YouTube. But you also have to you have to get in there and actually do it yourself. It's not fun just to watch other people do it. And it's kind of fun to make videos about it. Okay, so now I should be able to do, if I pull this all the way out, yeah, I can do the date quick set. Push it halfway in. Oh, all the way in. That's all the way in. It's winding. Halfway out. Uh-oh. Yeah. That's... So you can see that's setting the hands, the center gear. That's setting the quick set date. Oh no, it's all the way in now. Sorry. That's halfway. That's setting the quick set. And that's it. I have successfully repaired the keyless works on an ETA 2783. And now I have 2 of these working. Unfortunately, the next thing is to dig through the cases and see if I do have some cases for the 2783 from that lot of parts, but I'm sweating. Okay, cool. That's exactly what I wanted to accomplish with this video. I guess am I done showing off the microscope? I think it served well. I'm going to start a series of videos that are just about focusing on all the individual vintage watches that I own and doing detailed disassembly and reassembly, not including the movement, just the case, and then looking at the movement, talking about the movement, the history of that movement, and stuff like that. But that, I think, will help people not to go into the movement, because a lot of the YouTube videos go immediately to the movement because that's the hard part. But I think to do, there's 2 things, right? There's like the videos where guys go, oh, look, here's my watch, and they don't even open it. They just rotate it around and talk about it. And then there's the videos where they're like, oh, I'm going to do this watch, and then all of a sudden it's open and they're pulling gears out of the movement. I want to do something that's in between, that's like, here's the watch, here's how you open it, here's how you remove the movement from the case, this is what the movement is, this is the caliber that's in this watch, and these are the details of it. And then put it back together again, because I've done that with all of my watches for cleaning them superficially, not cleaning the inside of the movement, and for reluming them. And so I'm pretty good at doing that at this point, knock on wood. And then with all this other stuff, I've been getting the microscope and oils and stuff like that. The next step will be to be able to do the full movement maintenance. The other thing is I have enough vintage watches that problems come up from time to time where I'm starting to be like, okay, now I have some problem with these Seiko Bellmatics. Maybe I'll do that before I do the other video. But these guys, this one has a problem that it's running really well, except for sometimes the time just doesn't advance. And I think that actually has to do with the keyless works also, or the cannon pinion. something where it's not re-engaging correctly. So I need to look at that. And then this one has a problem of the day wheel has dislocated itself. And I have a third one of these that's working perfectly. But between these two, I should be able to reference one against the other to figure out what's wrong with each of them and make sure that they're working. And that's something I probably wouldn't have been... I'm psyched about the microscope. Seiko movements are notoriously difficult to work with, so I'm psyched about having the microscope and going in there and trying to get those working without doing a full movement, disassembly, and cleaning yet. Okay, if you've watched this far, thanks a lot. If you enjoy this video, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.